Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again to the Old World Paranormal Podcast, episode 87. I was not on episode 86 as I was extremely under the weather for about a week. It was pretty horrible. I missed out on a little bit of the adventures of Nick, who is also not here with us today, not because he's sick. He's actually working. Our guest today, we've got about a 5-hour time difference, and I have the fortunate situation to be able to get out of work at a decent hour. And unfortunately, he does not. So he's not able to be here today. And he's a little bit upset about that, but that's all right. He can listen to it when it comes out on the podcast. But I have to say, I'm pretty excited about today's guest. One of, I'm sure one of the shows that we all watched was Ghost Hunters International. As you know, we had on Rob Demarest here a few weeks back. That guy is a card, I'm telling you. I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit today too and find out if he's really like that or if he was putting on a show. But if you are a watcher of Ghost Hunters International or Ghost Hunters for that matter, you are familiar with today's guest all the way from Northern Ireland, Mr. Barry Fitzgerald. Barry, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Sean, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Man, it's a pleasure. Our podcast is not comprised of what I guess the term is celebrity paranormal personalities or celebrity ghost hunters. It's not really what we do, but from time to time we do like to bring them on because guys like you and the Ghost Hunters cast and things like that are the people that not only got us interested in what we do, but also have taught us so much over the years and have helped us out in the field greatly. So aside from having guys like you, we also have other paranormal teams from around the globe. We've had some people from the United Kingdom on before. We also have people on that are into UFOs, UAPs, supposed abductees, Bigfoot experts. We run the gamut of everything. Every now and then, it's just nice to have somebody on, such as yourself, who has been doing this for a while and is able to share some knowledge with the world on top of what you've already shared. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And I would probably say this is the farthest distance guest we've had. So that's pretty cool. I think you actually topped the person we had in the UK because, of course, you're going to be quite a bit farther north. But let's talk about you. Where have you been? What have you been doing since you were? Do we want to say mainstream TV?
Mainstream TV. My divergence away from mainstream TV and back to my roots
Okay.
was very critical for me. I found I really wanted to connect back into the land in which I was born, and examine the mythology and the folklore here, and see, we all love a good story in Ireland, but was there any more substance to those stories? And I think from our perspective, when myself and a friend of mine and co-author of the band She and Legend Seekers, when we got our heads together and we ended up investigating things that completely changed us around. It affected us in ways, and if I'm to be honest, that would change. It would eventually change my paradigm of what I thought the paranormal was, and that was significant. And for that to happen, it was exceptionally terrifying. I don't even have the words to explain what had happened, but we ended up going to a location, and we often hear tell of these very strange and bizarre stories, and we take it with a pinch of salt, but we went to this place completely unprepared, and we completely underestimated what it actually was, and that had significant impacts in my perception of the paranormal, and where that has led now. Of course, many books later, and I think it's 12 books, and the 13th is on its way. It's being written as we speak. Um, it has really changed things around and really addressed this idea of the paranormal and the greater context of the other fringe research fields to show that possibly what we're looking at is from the same source. And effectively pigeonholing the phenomena has done nothing but service an injustice in which we need to lift those barriers and start working together. Ufologists, cryptozoologists, we all need to start working together to understand it. And this last book that we're committing to really is it's a deep examination of the phenomena, what we're interacting with, where it's coming from, and also the deceptive nature behind it and why. Yeah, it's a very revealing book, but very very heavily based in science, which is a complete change for me to understand the phenomena.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's different.
So, would you say on a comparative scale, Irish folklore compared to, I suppose, whatever the equivalent would be here in the United States? I mean, here in the United States, I guess you talk legend and lore. Legend and lore, of course, is subject to whatever group, whatever demographic that's coming from. Would you say that there are more instances of that in I know Ireland, the UK, for example, than there are here in the United States?
I think what we tend to have is a grouping of people who have got a longevity to the landscape. It's different than the United States. The majority now are of course, from other places around the world and bring in their own folklore and mythology, and that, of course, enters the mixing pot. But if you strip all that away and you look at what the land has prior to the arrival of the settlers and everything else, there is a rich landscape there already. And for us, here we've got passage chambers that predate the Great Pyramids of Giza. We can access those 24/7, 365 days a year.
Really?
So we're not limited to the likes of, and this is something that I noticed in the United States when I was there, that you have to be out of the parks by 10 o'clock.
Most of the time.
That annoyed me greatly because I felt that I was being robbed from the land, and I felt so bad for the Americans there. I said, but why is this happening? Because we don't do it. So I never fully understood that. But from our perspective, our heritage goes way back, and we've had many people, various different cultures coming into the land, and they've had their input in it as well. To really call yourself Irish, there are many different DNA lineages in there that we can get lost in. I think for myself, I'm 56% Celt, and then there's 26% Scandinavian, and then there's a few other bits around Europe and various bits and pieces. So we're infused with a lot of different aspects. But in saying that, we still have a nation of people who are still very much connected to the landscape, and the landscape is still connected to us. The back in the early Celtic period, around 500 BC, when they first started arriving on the island, there was a phenomenon called the Celtic wheel that was drawn up, and the Celts understood that if you wanted to know anything about the ancient Irish, about the ancestors, you went west, and there you find a huge amount of ancient structures along the western shores. But if you want to know anything about poetry, the arts, and things like that, you headed south. If you want to know anything about politics, you went east. And if you wanted to know anything about war, you went north. Now, most people listening to this may understand the whole situation that developed within Northern Ireland and that led to the serious troubles from the 1970s. But that in itself is nothing but a cycle. Because we're looking at the Celts here who were coming before Christianity, before Catholics and Protestants, all of that nonsense. This is something that was it was cycling, and it doesn't matter which senator comes in to fix this. Eventually, the land is going to take its toll. It's going to want its toll, and we see that within the Celtic wheel of Ireland, and that is something that keeps coming back time and time.
Well, that's definitely something, American history versus, a brief introspective as to what you're talking about. Here in the United States, we don't have such a deep connection to our home. Whether that's because history has already come and gone and we're just riding the wave of what's left over, or, we just are not the people who want to get so deeply invested in our land. I think it's, to a lot of people, it's just a place to live, and there's some cool stuff to see. As opposed to what you're saying, there's a deep connection between the Irish people and the land, which is something you find rarely, but you do find it in other countries. You were talking about structures predating the pyramids and things like that. The Egyptian people are tied to their land. They're very deeply in love with their land, and there's so much rich history there. And I think that history kind of tends to go hand in hand with that. I think they're kind of synchronous. National parks and stuff closing down at 10 o'clock. I tell you what, I would never advocate for being in a park after hours. But I may have been in there and not known the park was closed and experienced, in fact, Gettysburg this past July. For me, what was a life-changing experience in the battlefields of Gettysburg. So I agree, you miss out on a lot when those ropes go up at night. And unfortunately, vandals and things of that nature have made it necessary to do that, I think, as much as it stinks.
Yeah, it is. It is. I felt horrible for the American people. But there it is. That's
it is what it is. So let's talk about your start in the paranormal. What made you one day decide, I really want to see what else there is. I want to dive into the paranormal aspect, not just, keep the historical side there, of course, and things like that. But what made you interested in the paranormal as we know it today?
I think there's always been that interest. There's always been something there that has turned my focus to the void beyond. And again, that may be reflective of the people who were here before. Before we came on there, I was saying that you missed a wonderful Halloween celebration this year in Ireland, and Halloween, of course, here would be called Samhain, which is the end of the summer celebration. It's a time when, and I have to point out that Halloween was born here. It was created here and then spread. But the idea that we have places, liminal places where we can go back to and call the ancestors forward for communion, and also to share some of that knowledge that comes from beyond the void, for the years ahead, asking for blessings and stuff like that. So that is very much part of who we are here, and not only that, but again, in Ireland we love stories, and we're a nation of storytellers, and we love to hear the old stories of the fairy and the banshee and things like that. But not understanding that there are more to it than that. We're led to believe that's where it ends. It ends within the pages. I wasn't content with that. I thought to myself, no, for the longevity of these stories, there has to be something more to carry this. Because we've seen, in the past, we've seen old gods come and go, and they're completely forgotten. Right. But yet we have still got something that lingers on in or over the landscape that seems to stretch beyond for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So how is that possible if there's no substance to it? So that's what I wanted to know, and that really carried me into it. And I think, you know, one of the people that really really set me on my way would have been John Keel. I read his book Jadoo whenever I was at school and was just immediately hooked. And his encounters and journeys across Asia and into India was just phenomenal. And I said, that's what I want to do. And I remember starting work as a young lad leaving school, and one of my managers said to me, "So Barry, what is it you want to do? You know, what is it you want to do when you grow up?"
$1 million question.
I want to be Indiana Jones. Little did I know. I would be in those ancient tombs worldwide, and after all manner of stuff. So yeah, it fared out okay in the end.
Yeah. Well, I think at some point we all wanted to be Indiana Jones. I mean, what an exciting thing. And you know, in a way, like you said, in a way we are. We are uncovering the archaeology of the paranormal instead of the archaeology of the physical, which is amazing. You know, I wasn't really too interested in doing this kind of stuff until, you know, little later years. I'm 47 now, but I had an experience as a child that I couldn't ever explain and didn't really think much of it, you know, through my childhood years. And as the time went by, I thought, you know, well, what was that? And then you turn on the TV and you start seeing the emergence of these TV shows. Very first TV show, paranormal related, that I ever watched was Paranormal State. It is my favorite show of all time. No disrespect toward GHI, but it is the one
with Ryan Buell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Captain's chair. Yeah.
But it is the one that really, you know, hooked me, and to this day, I think it remains one of the most authentic shows out there. But then we get shows that come along like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International, and it opens up. Ghost Hunters International opens up the world that, you know, it was that moment that, hey, this is not just something here. This is all over the globe. So, you know, you beginning your journey as an investigator, and I want to say a researcher, I guess would probably be a good term to use as well. When did the idea of being on TV come into play? Was that just a happenstance, or did somebody reach out? How did that all work out? Because I got to imagine the logistics of something like that has to be insane.
Well, I should point out that it was never in my mindset to be on TV.
Right.
So, you know, I've been at this now over 35 years. So, you know, it's my life's path that I'm walking, and that just happened to be on it for a period of time.
Gotcha.
And ghost hunters were coming to Ireland, and they needed someone to be there like a fixer.
Okay.
And so my name was put forward because of friends that I had in Washington, D.C. And so they reached out, and I said, sure, yeah, I can sort some things out for you. And so when they arrived, they told me, we're a man down. Would you be okay if we went, if you were to go on camera? And I thought about it and says, well, yeah, I suppose. Okay.
Yeah.
And
why not?
The shows went out, and they were one of the highest rated shows in the series history. And about maybe several months after that, I was busying myself and got a phone call from LA, which I thought was odd. And they said, we're doing an international show in which you will travel the world looking for paranormal phenomena. Would you consider being part of the cast? And I thought about it for 2 or 3 seconds and said, and that was
Indiana Jones, here we come.
Yeah. So it really was just happenstance, you know, it wasn't something that I went out to do. I never entered a tape for anyone or anything like that.
Right.
They came looking me.
Yeah, and that's that's the thing that we discuss all the time is there's so many different shows out there, and unfortunately the state of the paranormal right now is in a weird space because we are at a point where everybody wants to be famous. Well, let me backtrack that. Not everybody. I myself, our team, there are a lot of people who really we don't care. We're doing
Mm-hmm.
what we love to do. We're
Mm-hmm.
sharing information. We're
Sure.
gaining information.
Yeah.
TV. You know what? If you want me to say something for 30 seconds on camera, sure, whatever. But we don't have the idea of fortune and glory does not exist in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Another Indiana Jones reference there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and YouTube, social media has opened up new gateways where TV is not even a necessity anymore for someone to get their
Sure.
name out there. There's some um, amazing content on YouTube and TikTok and whatever else is out there. I'm not the guy who messes around with all that, but there's some great stuff out there. But it just seems that everybody wants to make a name for themselves, and by doing
Yeah.
that, so much other stuff is falling by the wayside. You've got people out there with amazing outreach. People reaching millions of people, but you're so focused on making a name for yourself or putting the demon word in your YouTube video for clicks. And I'll tell you what, that just makes me so furious. That story for another day. But what is your opinion? I mean, you've obviously got 30 years of introspect looking at how this field has evolved. What direction do you think it's going? And what do you think the next step is? What do you think the next hurdle is? Do you think we're here in the United States back in the 70s? You may have heard of the satanic panic. This is okay. It seems like in a way we're going back toward that, where the paranormal has gone from great television, great investigating, amazing evidence to we got scratched by a demon. Click here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the state of the paranormal now, and where do you think that it's headed, in your opinion?
A great science starts with observation, and rarely now do we see observation in the field
Hmm.
to understand what you're going up against, to understand the threats, and also understand what others are going up against as well. TV was the initial offset that really promoted this idea of paranormal investigating, ufology, and cryptozoology and everything else. But you're right, now it's becoming the old hat, and now social media is taking over. The TikToks, everything else is there, the YouTube videos, um, in which you don't need TV now to become famous. The problem with true paranormal phenomena is that we see this insidious nature enter groups, and a huge amount of that is caused by a corruption, especially within ego. What we tend to find is what we're trying to communicate with, there is a deceptive line to it that gains access through ego. Now, the more hits you have, the more likes you got, that becomes problematic in its own weight, and it's something that very rarely do the new investigators even consider or contemplate. So there's that tendency to be aware of. Now within ufology, we have this other nature coming in which we have the magician's hand. Look at this hand, don't look at this one. And we're seeing that more so than ever before. And when we've got Congress sitting, telling us that we've got UFOs. Well, what we've got is someone telling us they're UFOs. Well, we have had those 50 years ago, and we were called conspiracy theorists.
Right.
What's different now? The only difference is that we've got mainstream media telling us it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Want to believe mainstream media again? Um, so there are things going out there. Never mind that when you've got hits that it's creating money for people, then you start seeing fakery. And anything on the internet can be faked. And that has to be, no matter what, we have to regard everything until proven otherwise as fake for what we see, because there's no context with it. We're sitting there watching this and we don't know what's going on behind the camera, what's going on to the side of the camera, or above or below. There is no context with this to understand the phenomenon. All we're seeing is this thing run across the screen. Now the CGI now is becoming exceptional, and now with artificial intelligence,
Yeah. Yeah.
the the sky is not even the limits anymore. So it's becoming very, very difficult, corrupt, and a wash of ego that in itself serves to corrupt, and allow in particular aspects of the true phenomena that we've been looking at for the last 200-300 years.
Right. And, along the lines of what you said too, I think, the fakery, the trickery, whatever the case may be, is a big slap in the face to people like yourself who have been out there, who have worked their butts off trying to gather information, gather evidence, doing things the right way. And then you've got, for lack of a better word, some of these kids coming along who decide to make a YouTube show and, hey, we can make all this stuff happen and people will tune in and click our link. And yeah, it's I haven't been doing this obviously for nearly as long as you have. But I can imagine that, you and other people who have been doing this for years are just like, come on, what, you have to sit back from time to time and go, why do I even bother when it's going to be like this?
If I'm honest, Sean, I pay no attention. I don't get drawn into it.
Okay.
In fact, my work, I ended up going underground with my work.
Right.
And I see a lot of researchers, when they've been in it long enough, they just cast off the stuff that floats to the top, and we dive.
Right.
And I still continue my work. I still do it every day. I'm doing something. But I learn something every day as well. I was speaking to other investigators around the world, such as yourself. We always share information. That in itself is vital. I'm not interested in putting it out there. Yes, okay, I'm writing a book on what I've discovered, but I'm not telling people, go out, read this, it's a must. I'm not concerned. If you don't read it, don't read it.
Right.
It doesn't worry me. And for me, I think this last book will be something that I'm leaving behind for the other researchers to say, okay, what possibly did he discover? Where was he coming from when he made these claims? But I think a key question comes down to it, and I think we must ask ourselves that: why are we doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing it for clicks? Or are we doing it for notoriety? Or are we doing it for ourselves? If we're doing it for ourselves, then I have no need to try and convince someone else.
Right.
I'm doing it for me. It's my path.
Mm-hmm.
So there are serious questions we have to ask about why we're here.
Right. What's the intention? And I mean, what a perfectly eloquent explanation. I mean, it's I guess the group that I'm a part of, it's the Old World Paranormal Society. We're a group of 6 people. Nick Carboni, who unfortunately isn't with us today, he started the group, and he started it not just because of interest, because he had things happening in his home, and someone came out and they were able to help him. And so in turn, he decided to do this to help other people. I suppose just like any other paranormal team out there, you want to get out to some of these famous locations and investigate and all that, which is fine. But the crux of what we do as a team is residential investigations. We are designed as a group to help people. We'll put, a video out every now and then. We'll do our little thing, but the purpose is to help people. And I think that it goes hand in hand with investigating some of these other places too, because the information that you learn, the things that you learn by visiting these other locations, can directly be translated into helping other people in their personal situations. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, because we talked at the very beginning here about the history of Ireland and some of the things that you're doing now, and you mentioned going into a location ill prepared for the experience that you had. Are we talking about just inexperience, or not inexperience, but not expecting things that haven't happened before, or were we dealing with something that you'd never dealt with before?
From my perspective,
right.
From my perspective, we ended up going into a situation which it wouldn't even have crossed my mind even could happen before.
Okay.
It just wasn't part of what I thought the paranormal was. So, from that particular context, it was a real eye opener of an experience. Of course, what it did was, as I said before, was to change my paradigm of what I thought it was. But when we started pulling the history of the site, the case, it was much of the history wasn't even on the internet. For us, we were having to go into ancient manuscripts and things like that to try and find our details.
Oh, wow.
And see that this was a place that people across Europe were coming to have their experience. The same experience that I had on the island, which I thought was impossible. But it was something that really took me on an investigative trail that led me right back into Babylon. So it was a unique experience, to say the least.
Now, is this an experience that you're going to have in a book, or is this an experience that'll remain personal with you?
No, it's gone into a book. In fact, some of it has gone into the last one that came out in March, called the Deceptions of Gods and Men, and that really delves into that about the cautions we need to, we need to slow down. We need to apply some brakes, and don't be afraid to challenge what is coming through, because as a race, I find time and time again that we seem to suffer from amnesia, and we have huge instances of people using talking boards or Ouija boards or whatever you want to call them, and they have these experiences, and they get what comes through tells them one truth and four lies. So they'll ignore the four lies and concentrate on the one truth. Folks, if it's lied to you once, it's going to lie to you again.
Indeed, yeah.
And the problem that and this is something that I really really infuse in my chats with other groups is, don't be afraid to challenge what's coming through. And whenever I say challenge, I mean clarify what is coming through. And I've always said, if an energy, entity, whatever you want to call it, if it's coming through for your positivity, for your benefit, it will not mind a few questions for clarity.
Right.
But what you tend to find is that when you become suspicious, it twigs it. And when you start to apply the thumb screws, it's gone.
Right.
It will break communication. Now, that in itself is a clear sign of a level of deception that we should be concerned about. I've spoken to others as well around this beautiful planet, who have taken the communications with these beings and know that they're lying to them, but still embrace them and utilize them within their lives. I don't do that. I bow out and go, no, that's not for me. Thank you very much. I will scrutinize very, very closely what is coming through. Don't get me wrong, there have been positive interactions, but a lot of times there's been this level of deception. And I find this even in ufology, when you've got these CE5 events where people are out meditating and using lights to call down these lights that are flying overhead, and they're getting flashbacks and everything else. I've had those experiences, but whenever I start to challenge those experiences, the phenomena stopped. It all it wants is adoration, worship, adoration. Do not question, do not stray. And I have a problem with that.
Yeah, as you should. Interestingly enough, a few episodes ago, we had someone who was able to do just that with the UFOs or UAPs. Would be able to go outside at any point in time and ask for them to appear, and there they would
Yeah.
be. So, yeah, it makes total sense. Wow. Yeah, I guess you never really think about it that way.
Well,
So,
whenever you take a step back and you look at the greater phenomena, for instance, gray aliens, the interaction of gray aliens, when you step back from that and you look at the fairy, you look at the jinn, you look at the incubus, succubus, there actually are threads that connect all this phenomena right out through the ages. Now, I got a question for you in regards fairies and the jinn.
yeah.
Both of those, in fact, all of those, absolutely are horrified of iron. Iron in an iron amulet that we wear around the neck. Um, they are petrified of coming close to iron. Now, those are the fairies and the jinn, of course, those ancient stories. But why are the gray aliens afraid of iron? Something's coming from Alpha Centauri. What the hell does it worry about iron? Iron is a shared element of defense that we use that keeps away the gray aliens, the jinn, the fairy, the incubus, the succubus. The old stories of the incubus and succubus, the majority of time they attacked women more so than men. They waited until the women entered their monthly cycle. They became anemic. The iron was low. That is when they attacked. The iron is key to understanding the phenomena. And when you see that connection of the phenomena, you see this is a broad range. All of the masks that have been applied to us as a civilization are dormant. We can track the phenomena through the interaction, not through the mask. We see that all of this has been happening to civilizations for thousands and thousands of years. But we are the ones who are being fooled by the way in which it wishes to be betrayed or understood. And flashing lights or flashing lasers at lights in the sky is no different than going into the desert and having a conversation with the jinn. It's the same. It's from the same source.
So pre-Iron Age, what would have been used then?
In Babylonian periods, what we tended to do, and this is something that we also see still being practiced today, strangely enough, is that when your house was being plagued, for instance, by a cusp of demons, they themselves were seen as problematic. You prayed to a greater demon, and you brought that in, and that brought stability back to the house.
What did that do for
Property.
you?
Well, and you know, isn't it interesting that when in the likes of religion, for instance, to bring some peace to a house, we will pray to certain entities or deities or divinity, to bring some peace to the property.
Right.
Well, do we know what we're actually calling in? Do we know the history of where this stuff is coming from? Do we know its intention? Like angels, for instance, they didn't appear before 582 AD. There was Ezekiel that created the idea of angels. The Christian church never really dealt with angels until the 5th century. So if they weren't angels, what were they before? They were Babylonian planetary gods,
Mm-hmm.
who were strategically taken and really enhanced the idea of a one god system. So that is, that can be very, very problematic, especially whenever you start going back in history and finding out, wait a minute, you're not what you said you are.
Mm-hmm.
What are you?
And some of these things have had literally millennia to come up with their own stories.
Oh
And
yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, well, that's
And they change their titles time and time again, and it's up to us to keep checking what they are.
hmm. Well, it's something that I don't think I really thought of before. Probably a lot of people actually haven't either. Are we really dealing with what we think we're dealing with? And man, that's a whole nother level to consider. I
Oh, it
mean,
gets much
really,
worse than that, but we'll not go into
yeah.
that.
I'm just trying to think like, how would I even utilize that? I mean, you've got to is that in order to discern that, does that require a level of faith, or is there something else that you're using to make
Oh,
that
so there
determination?
is a paper trail there that leads back. Like archaeology is very, very good, especially back into the Babylonian period. We've got AI now that can transcribe the tablets,
Mm-hmm.
uh, cuneiform tablets, and so the information is now starting to come out. But even, and I'm not taking a dig at this at all. It's just an awareness that is something, again, we should be careful about what we're pulling in, because we can create these molds of deities in which something can step into that,
Mm-hmm.
something from the void. So we have to be very, very careful, and that goes right up into modern religions. We need to be very, very careful and understand what it is that we're praying to and why.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's boy, listeners, absorb that all in, because I'm going to be going back and listening to this podcast a couple of times. um, oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, kind of springboarding on that a little bit. I've got a couple of questions here for you. We talked about Ouija boards, spirit boards, whatever that, what you choose to call them, talking boards. Do you believe that that is an effective method of spirit communication?
I think people get lost in the idea of the likes of Ouija boards and the negative connotations that comes with it, because really what it comes down to is intent,
Mm-hmm.
and the intent has to be there. Now, for instance, if this was no, here we go, perfect example, the old Star Trek communicator. If that was a recording device, the
Mm-hmm.
very moment that I say, is there anyone there? The intent is there to make contact. The intent is there. Now that of course, if you're fortunate enough, may open a small hole, and you may get a response. But with a Ouija board, you've got four people behind it now. Now you have multiplied the intent by four.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a problem.
And not everyone may have the same intent.
Not everybody may have the same intent. The more people there are, the more likely the intent is to break down. So if it goes too heavy, it just disintegrates into chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that we face is that although we're opening or pulling the veil apart a little bit to look in, we very rarely these days, if any, ever close the veil again when we're
Mm-hmm.
finished. And it doesn't matter if nothing, for instance, should make contact within the hour that you're there, or the night. But there's nothing to say, if you left the door open,
Mm-hmm.
that something could come through a day later, a week
Mm-hmm.
later, a month later.
Right.
So there are things, there are things that we need to be aware of. And look, it doesn't matter. Again, we get lost in this idea of the little pigeonholes. You've got the UFOs there, you've got the Bigfoot here, and you've got
Mm-hmm.
the ghost there, and all the rest. all of this phenomena, all of it can be brought forward. In other words, call it for what it is, all of it can be summoned. That's an esoteric practice. Now, that in itself should be enough to raise eyebrows. That we're looking at esoteric practices. This is not based in science. This is something else. This is something age old, just as old as serpent worship itself, which has now been dated back to 70,000 BC.
Yeah, I agree. The reason I ask is I am, as I think we all are, in a lot of ways, a skeptic when it comes to things like the Ouija board. We were at a location here recently where, of course, everybody wanted to do it, and I was like, no, I don't really care. I don't want to do it. And eventually, they talked me into it, and I sat there for 20 minutes, and nothing happened. I just find it hard to believe that I have my hands on a planchette on a board with letters, and I'm asking for something to talk to me, and there's a spirit casually coming by, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll play." Like, why? Why? I don't know. It's just my mind works a little bit differently.
Well, funny you should say about minds. I think it's worth mentioning that the likes of telepathy and things like that, when tested in the lab between husband and wife or partners, when they're very much of the same mindset, they're likely to have sporadic telepathic interaction. For instance, you and your wife could be standing looking out the window one day, and you think it, and your wife will say it. That type of phenomenon, the majority of us have experienced it.
Right.
But that in itself is also reflective of the harmonics within the brain that begins to sync up. Now, when you have a group of people that are there for the same purpose, like a group of friends, for instance, when we all get together and we start talking about the same thing, our brains all start syncing. If you've got someone in the group that said, no, I don't believe this, no, that actually can break down that particular sequence of events.
So, especially if you're looking at it from like a vibrational aspect, you've got all these vibrations meshing into each other, and then somebody sticks a fist up there and breaks it up apart.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, in itself, the synchronization of the brain waves doesn't sync up within that group, and the bigger the group, again, the worse it becomes. The phenomena breaks down. But there are techniques, in which we can enhance those psychic abilities. I think one is called the cerebral magnetic stimulation, in which we interfere with the this what the hell is it called now? Let me see if I can remember. It's a binding factor. This is something that's known in neurology. It's a 40 hertz pulse that begins at the front of the thalamus and goes all the way over the brain. Now, when you interfere with that signal, even lay people can have dramatic increases in paranormal phenomena, in psychic abilities. So again, there's a lot to be said about who we are, what we do, and what comes through us during these particular times. And we have to remain diligent, of course, during these times. Things that need to be considered.
It's just, we know such a small fraction of what we're capable of doing that it's unbelievable. But another reason I asked about the Ouija board too is I am not a big equipment person. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. I've seen, a lot of neat results from some different equipment. This is my tool of choice. I have gotten more incredible EVPs just from my phone recorder than I've ever gotten from any other device. I've never seen a full body apparition. I may have seen a shadow figure once, so the things that I've encountered, I don't use all this crazy equipment for, because I think the equipment interferes a lot of times more than it helps. And I actually kind of get that idea from Brandon Elvis. Brandon obviously is a very scientific based person, He doesn't use a ton of equipment, but the equipment that he does use, he uses it in a very specific manner. I just think that going into a house, putting all this equipment all over the floors, putting lasers on the walls, I think you're trying to get your own, you're trying to manifest your own results. I think by doing that, you're trying too hard. And I think you are manufacturing something, whether as opposed to actually getting something that you could be otherwise. So send me into a location with my cell phone and a flashlight. That's the human body is the greatest tool that I think you can use in any investigation.
Yeah.
And that's just me. Some people think I'm weird. In the meantime, we've got, $10,000 worth of equipment sitting in suitcases that we never break out because we don't use it anymore. But that's just the nature of the beast, I think.
Homeland Security is known for spending hundreds of thousands of US dollars on new security techniques and equipment. And they are completely outstripped. The effectiveness of their technology is outstripped by the security guard that suddenly senses something isn't right.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that? And that's what I was breaking down in one of the books that I'd written, The Influence. It was understanding on a biological level what the body does, how it does it to pick up on these extra sensory abilities.
Yeah.
And you're right. The human body is the best piece of equipment that we have. The problem that we face with too much technology, I think, I really feel, is that too much technology serves to keep us locked in that problem-solving element of the brain. It's not allowing us to open up to listen to that subtle instinct, that gift of discernment that we all have. So because we're locked in that part of the brain, we're not getting away from that. We're consciously watching the equipment. We're considering what it's doing and everything else, and failing to recognize that the world around us is still going ahead while we're constantly being locked on a damn LED that's flashing.
Yep. Oh, okay. That's so funny that you said that, because we had just talked about this the other day. While you're walking around going like this and going like this, you are totally missing everything that's going on outside of that little 7-inch screen. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a lot to consider. It's a lot to break down, and obviously a lot more to dive into as far as research and things like that go. So let's switch gears one little time here. You have obviously been a lot of different places, TV show or not. What is the place that you went to that really had the most impact on you as a paranormal investigator, or an investigator in period? It doesn't have to necessarily be paranormal, but a place that you walked out of and you kind of came out and you were like, wow, this is it. Well, what would that place be for you? Could be from the show, cannot be from the show, doesn't matter.
I think there were several places. One of course was Mayan ruins in I think it was Nicaragua that we were in. But I ended up going back that night. The crew were in. They were doing some filming, but I was left to my own devices. And I looked at this pyramid in front of me, and I thought, wow. And I started to climb the pyramid in the dark, and got to the top of it, and I lay flat on the top of this massive pyramid as the moon came over the top of the jungle canopy. And I was looking at the stars, and I thought, this is a one-off experience. And I was just blown away at that particular moment. The connection with this particular culture and the nature that surrounded me. Of course, at any moment it could have been eaten by a bloody panther. I wouldn't have known it was coming.
Right. You'd have never seen it coming.
Yeah. But it was a remarkable experience. And I think another one would have been back here in Ireland, which would have been that visiting that island, the island of the dead, which made that real dramatic impact that put me onto the path that I'm on now.
It's interesting, as you were talking about climbing up to the top of the pyramid and laying down and looking up. It almost makes you wonder, how long had it been since someone else had done that? Maybe you were the second person ever, other than maybe someone that helped build these things, that laid there and looked up at the stars. I mean, that's just a that's just a neat thing to ponder.
Yeah.
Okay. One place that you would love to go but have not been able to yet to investigate.
It's Dallin Valley in Norway.
Okay.
That place has phenomena coming out of its backside, and yes, okay, it's connected with ufology, but there are also creatures that are being seen in the valley as well that intrigues me greatly, and they're not normal types of creatures. Like we're looking at this metaphysical aspect to the phenomena, and not only that, okay, European scientists are now based. They have a base within the valley, and they've got all this specialized equipment. They're watching the phenomena occur. Much of the phenomena is happening in frequencies that we can't even see. And there was one of these objects that appeared just over the hillside and produced the same amount of rays of frequency, of light frequency, as our sun in our atmosphere. But now these lights are producing beams of light down to the ground. They're scanning for something, which is something that we also see here in Ireland. They're looking for something, and that amazes me to no end. So it's something I would like to go to observe, but I would also like to bring. I know we talked about technology there, but I also want to bring the high-speed drones, because we can't reach those lights on the other side of the valley, because by the time we get into a car, descend and drive across at speeds that we'd be allowed to drive at, the phenomenon would be over. But with a drone, packed with as much sensors as we can carry, that thing can travel at nearly 200 miles per hour.
Right.
That I would fly straight across the valley and into the eye of this thing. We would pull back all that footage that we could get to try and understand this phenomena without starting an international war, of course.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've never heard of that place before, but it kind of sounds like the Norwegian version of Skinwalker Ranch here in the United States.
Yeah, I suppose it could be. Yeah,
to an extent.
It's been going on. It's been going on for decades now.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, man, if anything, I think you've given me and probably a lot of our listeners a lot of things to think about, some new things to explore, to dig into, and think about now. And definitely have me, that's for sure. I really wanted to tie this up a certain way, but you've got me thinking at the same time I'm talking here, and I don't function very well.
Well, as I say, it's good for us to be able to share information.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we do this. We want to be able to kind of compartmentalize that information, put it out there, and let people use it as they see fit. I would definitely love to have you on at another point in time to talk about more things too. Definitely. We do have a couple of questions that we ask all of our guests. Some are funny, some are more or less serious. One of the ones involves equipment. Now, it's one thing that we really didn't talk about this time as far as specific equipment, but if you were going on an investigation and you could only take with you 3 pieces of equipment to investigate, what would you take with you? What would be in Barry's backpack?
Number one, it would have to be the new heat sensing binoculars, because you can see up to 3 miles away with these things, and they record onto video, which covers so many fields of investigative interests that I would be using them with. Secondly, I would probably bring with me a good cell phone, so that if anything did happen, they would find my dead ass lying in the field. And thirdly, a flashlight. And that would be me done. That's the three pieces of equipment, and the rest is me.
Okay. Perfect answers. One we've never had before, for sure, with the heat. That's different. No, Jason Hawes is obsessed with his IR, or his is that what it is? He walks around with this thing. I think it's infrared, just shows all the different heat.
Oh, the flare gun.
The flare. Sorry, yeah. That guy. You could, when the day comes that we can attach cybernetics to ourselves, he's going to have one. The rest, I'll tell you, cracks me out. And the next question, this one has become very important here recently because of the range of answers that we've gotten just in normal conversation. Okay. And so now it's become one of our questions. Everybody knows that when you go on a paranormal investigation of any kind, you need to have snacks. What are the 3 snacks going to be in your backpack next to all of your equipment you're taking with you? Top 3 snacks you're taking with you.
Apple, banana, and nuts.
Those are 3 we have not gotten. Apple, banana, nuts. Not bad. Okay. Hopefully it's not a long investigation.
The reason for that is because the refined sugar in other treats can actually shut down our gift of discernment.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Look at that. Asking questions about snacks.
We're going in blind. Effectively, we're blinding ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I was going to say food for thought, but that might be, yeah. Wow. Awesome. I do have one question for you, though. I've been looking at this poster behind you the whole time, and it's a little bit scary. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, that's well, above is the color which you can't see. In the clouds is the specific color, the frequency, which resonates with the mounds, the ancient mounds, and of course underneath the mounds you have the she, which is the fairy. You have the Trinity, and then you have the sorcery at the bottom.
Definitely not what I think of when I think of a fairy. Maybe we'll have to have a conversation on that next time.
They're not what they're not the Victorian style fairy, that's for sure.
All right. Well, apparently not, because that one looks like something terrifying. Well, hey Barry, thank you very much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. It has been a pleasure. It has been an eye-opening experience, given me and hopefully a lot of other people some things to think about, and maybe just help themselves a little bit going into these investigations and doing these research. Maybe something will be a little bit different. Maybe some things will change here soon, and I definitely hope it does. Before we say goodbye, feel free to talk about any of your books, recent books that are coming out, ways that people can follow you or reach out to you and things like that. So go ahead and take a couple minutes and do the thing.
Well, the recent book, The Deceptions of Gods and Men, is available on Amazon, and it's available in hardback, softback, ebook, and audiobook. I highly recommend the audiobook. I got lost in it myself, thinking to myself, my God, this is absolutely fantastic. And then realized I was the bloody idiot that wrote it. But it is very, very good. So people can find me on Amazon. And if they wish to ask me any further questions, they can find me also on Facebook and Twitter.
Fantastic. Once again, Barry, thank you very much. We appreciate it greatly, and definitely look forward to the next time. We'll have to set something up in the near future.
Thank you, Sean. Take care and have a great day over there.
Thanks. You do the same.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.